You used to feel more. The news story that now produces a flat, tired recognition used to produce genuine distress. The cause you once advocated for with energy and urgency has become something you cannot bring yourself to open. The friend going through a difficult time arrives in your awareness and you find, with something close to guilt, that you have nothing to offer, not because you don't care, but because the caring capacity that was once abundant has been so thoroughly drawn down that the draw on what remains feels like the last reserves of something that cannot be replenished by intention alone. This is compassion fatigue. And while the clinical literature has historically located it in professional caregivers, the research on its occurrence in the general population has expanded significantly, driven by the specific conditions of modern information environments. The 24-hour news cycle, social media's continuous delivery of global suffering, and the specific psychological cost of being a genuinely caring person in a world that provides unlimited access to evidence of how much care is needed. You do not need a professional helping role to develop compassion fatigue. You need only a nervous system capable of genuine empathic response, an information environment that delivers suffering at scale and without pause, and insufficient recovery of the specific kind that compassion fatigue requires and that most people in its grip have stopped being able to access. Charles Figley, the researcher who first systematically studied compassion fatigue in professional caregiving contexts, defined it as the cost of caring, the specific emotional and psychological depletion that results from sustained exposure to others' suffering and sustained mobilization of the empathic capacity that genuine care requires. The extension of this framework to everyday life is not a loosening of the definition. It is a recognition that the conditions Figley identified in professional caregiving contexts, sustained exposure to suffering, sustained empathic response, insufficient recovery, are now available to virtually anyone with a smartphone and a conscience. The average person scrolling through a social media feed in the morning is not exposed to the suffering of the 150 people in their immediate social world. They are exposed to the curated, algorithmically amplified suffering of billions, the war, the disaster, the injustice, the individual story of pain that was selected specifically for its emotional salience. The empathic nervous system does not distinguish between the suffering of someone known and the suffering of a stranger presented vividly enough. It responds to both. And the sustained, high-frequency, high-intensity empathic response to a world of suffering encountered primarily through screens is drawing on the same finite resource that sustained professional caregiving draws on. The neuroscience of empathic response provides the biological framework for understanding why compassion fatigue is a genuine depletion rather than a failure of character. Tanya Singer at the Max Planck Institute for Human Cognitive and Brain Sciences has conducted some of the most important neuroimaging research on the distinction between empathic pain sharing and compassionate concern. Her findings are clinically crucial. Empathic distress, the direct sharing of another person's pain, the felt resonance with their suffering, activates the same neural regions as the experience of pain itself. The anterior insula and anterior cingulate cortex, which process the affective, distressing component of pain, show elevated activation when a person empathically resonates with another's suffering. This shared pain response is genuine. The person experiencing it is, neurologically, experiencing a form of the suffering they are witnessing. And it is depletable. Sustained activation of these pain processing systems in response to others' suffering produces, over time, the same withdrawal and numbing that sustained personal pain produces. What Singer's research additionally found was that compassionate concern, the warm, caring orientation toward another person's suffering that involves the motivation to help rather than the direct sharing of the suffering, activates a different and more sustainable neural profile. The regions associated with positive affect, with affiliation, with the motivation to approach and care rather than to withdraw from distress, show elevated activation during compassionate concern. And this profile, unlike the empathic distress profile, appears to be restorative rather than depleting, with compassion training actually increasing practitioners' capacity for sustained engagement with suffering rather than reducing it. The practical implication. The specific quality of the empathic response matters as much as the quantity. The person whose response to others' suffering is primarily empathic distress, who feels the pain directly, who resonates with the suffering from the inside, depletes faster and recovers more slowly than the person whose response is primarily compassionate concern, who cares deeply, who is motivated to help, but who does not carry the suffering internally in the same way. The distinction between compassion fatigue, depression, and burnout is clinically important because the interventions for each differ, and misidentifying one as another leads to treatments that provide partial relief at best. Depression is characterized by pervasive low mood, anhedonia, and the neurochemical changes that produce its specific symptom profile. It can be triggered by compassion fatigue but is a distinct condition with its own treatment requirements. The compassion-fatigued person who is not depressed retains the capacity for pleasure in non-compassion-demanding contexts. The depressed person does not. Burnout, as Maslach's model identifies it, is produced primarily by chronic workplace overextension and involves exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced efficacy. Compassion fatigue specifically involves the depletion of empathic capacity, the ability and willingness to extend genuine care, which can occur outside formal work contexts, and which is not primarily driven by workload but by empathic demand. The compassion-fatigued person may be fully energetic in contexts that do not require empathic engagement, and may experience genuine fatigue, numbness, or withdrawal specifically in response to the distress or needs of others. The burnout sufferer is more globally depleted. Understanding which of these is present, or whether they are co-occurring, as they frequently do, determines the specific focus of recovery. If you are watching this and recognizing the specific guilty flatness of someone who used to feel more and cannot find what happened to the feeling, like this video right now, and write in the comments, "I am not indifferent, I am depleted, and I am allowed to recover." Because that distinction between a person who has stopped caring and a person whose caring has been exhausted is the most important reframe this video offers. The guilt of the compassion-fatigued person is frequently the additional wound they do not need. They have been caring so hard for so long that they have run out, and the discovery that they have run out is experienced as evidence of inadequacy rather than as evidence of how much they gave. Write it. The modern information environment has created a specific and underaddressed compassion fatigue risk that did not exist at scale before the digital age. The human empathic system evolved to respond to the suffering of people in immediate social proximity, the 150 people of the Dunbar number, encountered face-to-face, across a lifetime of shared experience. The suffering of distant others was, for most of human history, inaccessible. What could not be perceived could not activate the empathic response. The digital information environment has eliminated this protective filter. The suffering of millions is now accessible, vivid, and continuous, delivered in formats specifically optimized for emotional salience, selected by algorithms for their capacity to generate the engagement that emotional activation produces. The empathic nervous system is processing a volume and intensity of others' suffering that it was never calibrated to handle, at a frequency that allows no recovery between exposures. Psychologist Paul Slovic at the University of Oregon, whose research on the collapse of compassion documents the counterintuitive finding that people respond less, not more, to larger numbers of people in need, identifies this as the psychic numbing that the overwhelmed empathic system produces as a protective adaptation. The numbing is not indifference. It is the automatic protective response of a system that has been overwhelmed to the point where continued full response would be unsustainable. The person who has been consuming a diet of global suffering through their news feed and social media, and who now finds themselves unable to respond to individual suffering with the emotional availability that they and others expect, is not a worse person than they were before the numbing. They are a person whose empathic resource has been drawn down by a demand that the environment places on it without providing the conditions for its restoration. Recovery from compassion fatigue in everyday life requires the same specific inputs that recovery from compassion fatigue in professional caregiving contexts requires, and the same recognition that these inputs are not luxuries but functional necessities. The most important first step is the deliberate limitation of empathic demand from sources that do not require the response. The news cycle that delivers suffering continuously does not require the same empathic engagement as the friend who is calling in genuine need. The social media feed that algorithmically delivers distressing content is not a moral obligation. Turning it down, setting specific, bounded times for engagement with media that produces empathic demand is not indifference. It is resource management. Singer's research on compassion training provides the second input, the deliberate cultivation of the compassionate concern orientation rather than the empathic distress orientation. The shift from resonating with suffering to maintaining warm, caring concern for the suffering person without being internally flooded by it is learnable through mindfulness-based compassion practices, through the specific cognitive reframing that orients toward motivation to help rather than toward shared pain, and through the therapeutic processing of the vicarious traumatization that sustained empathic distress can produce. And genuine restorative experience, the experiences that activate the affiliative, positive effect systems that Singer's research identifies as the neural counterpart to compassionate fatigue, is the third requirement. Not the absence of empathic demand. The positive presence of experiences that restore the emotional and neurological resources the empathic demand has depleted. Connection with people who care for you in return, experiences of beauty, meaning, and joy that activate the approach system rather than the distress system, and the specific embodied rest that allows the nervous system to return to baseline. You did not become less caring. You became depleted by too much caring, delivered at too high a frequency, to too many sources of suffering, without the specific recovery that the capacity for care requires to sustain itself. The numbness is not who you are. It is what happens to the most empathically responsive people when the demand on their empathy exceeds the rate of its restoration for long enough. And the path back is not the decision to care more, which the depleted system cannot honor. It is the deliberate, specific, somewhat uncomfortable work of restoring the conditions in which care is possible, by limiting the demand, by shifting the mode, and by receiving enough of what you have been giving that the account has something to give from again. The world needs your care. It also needs you to survive the caring of it. These are not competing priorities. They are the same one. If this video gave you something you needed to hear, share it with someone who has been caring without replenishment for too long. Subscribe to this channel for weekly deep dives into the psychology of how we sustain the qualities that make us human, and how we recover them when the world has drawn them down. You are not indifferent. You are depleted. Those two things are not the same. And only one of them is recoverable.